final day of our August related batches. Our major work for today is to discuss about logging, so end-to-end logging discussion. Okay, and right from day one we are using, and logging is very important for any project. So logging, in simple words, you can say it tracks the flow of application. Okay, what values will the application take at runtime will be saved in logs. These are basic important things. Okay, just imagine you have built a product. Some customer in production is trying to use your application and he faced some problem. He asks a question, tell me what actually went wrong. So you need to go to the logs to check the problem. So if you don't have logs, basically you will not be able to trace what is going on in your project. So logging is important. It is so important that without logging, changes will not be deployed into production. Okay, without logging, changes will not be deployed into prod. So it is very important. And in simple words, right from day one, we are doing the logging in the application. Let's say you go to payment controller. So right from day one, we are doing some logging. We are printing the values. So this printing is nothing but logging. So trace of the application, how the controller is calling the service to the DAO, to the helper classes, and in every place, what are the values which takes at runtime. So tracking all that is nothing but logging. So logging in simple terms says it tracks the flow of the application and what values will the application take at runtime. And the primary purpose is using logs, you can investigate the problems. Okay, what is right, what is wrong, logs can help you in that manner. Okay, now right from the beginning time, even let's say you're learning core Java, we start with one kind of a logging model there, right? System.out.println. So it basically can write statements and with some values, you can do that value. So right from the beginning time, we are doing it. Okay. However, there are some problems with System.out.println. So people say don't use SOP for live projects. You're not supposed to do that. With System.out.println, your code is never going to be deployed in production. Okay, there are some serious problems. We will discuss some of the major problems. However, if you're not using System.out.println, some alternate is needed. So alternate means maybe some other jar files, classes. What is System.out.println? Println is a method in some other Java class. So if you really check it out, System.out is sysout. Okay, and you're putting this statement, whatever. So what exactly is this statement? Println is a method. I'm doing an F3. This method is defined inside print stream class. So if you really notice, this out is nothing but it's a variable of print stream defined in system. So nothing but Java is all about objects, classes, methods. So when you call this, so there is, in short, if you put, there is a class and some method you call for logging purpose. For example, you're calling this println method on one of the class, right? So this is print stream class. On this print stream class, and it is available here. So your class is this one, your method is this one. Now automatically, if people are saying System.out.println is having problems, we should not use that. We will discuss some of the major problems. Okay, but if we are not supposed to do that, so we need some alternate. So like this is a class and a method, so we need some alternate, means another class and some another method. So if you know this other class and other method, automatically we will be able to work. And right from the day one of our project, we are using this other class, another method, and that is nothing but log. Okay, log is an object of, if you really see, mouse over, log is an object of logger class. So there is some class called as logger. We are using class called as logger, and then method all throughout the project we have used info. So today we need to get into more details, but just imagine, logging is important. Without logging, people cannot take it into production. It helps in investigation. It helps in tracking the flow. Runtime values can be printed. So these are mandatory things. Logging has to be done. Simple core Java project, we start learning System.out.println. There we are doing loggings. I think with latest versions of Java in 25 and all, they have given some alternates also for all these things. But anyways, some traditional approaches are there. But however, for projects, they expect you should not use it in this manner because some serious problems are there. We will discuss those problems, but we need an alternate. Now, when we use this, we use a class, we use a method. On print stream, we call println, it prints the value. This print stream is available inside system class. But anyways, it's a class and a method. So we need some other class, some other method which can do the logging. So we are creating a logger object, an object of logger, and then we are calling info method, and this is printing, and market is recommending to use this kind of an approach. Okay, so this is a basic clarity okay, what is what in terms of logging. Now let's discuss some of the core issues with using System.out.println. Okay, so guys, we will start doing some experiments in Stripe provider service. Let's say payment processing service. So we will be doing some changes in, payment processing service. So let's start the payment processing service. Right click, run as Spring Boot application. Guys, the basic clarity is there. What is logging? Everything is clear. Give a quick thumbs up. Basic, printing the values, tracking the flow of the application. Are we clear, guys? Are you listening? Looks like one. Okay, there are a few members who are listening. Where's Spring Boot app? Okay, Tomcat started on 8082. Let's go to payment controller. So let's imagine currently we have this statement. Okay, and now we are supposed to even have System.out.println just for experimenting purpose. So let's compare how these two results happen. Okay, so I'm doing a save. Let's just call the created method. Let's call the created method. Okay, it continued. Processing service, Hikari pool, all this is okay. We need to get just observe. This is the difference. Difference number one. When you are using something like this log.info, some additional information happens. And if you're doing System.out.println, basically directly the message is printed. So you printed creating payment transaction. So we are getting creating payment transaction. This additional information, like at what time it is there, what is the process ID, which service, which thread is executing, which class it is written into payment controller, and then comes the message part. So the first main thing itself, try to understand, using System.out.println, we lose this capability to get additional information. Okay. Now let's say some people will say we can do a hack and then put it, or maybe in every message we will try to put all this additional information, timestamp, this, that. But point is, as developers, why we should worry about it? Everything should happen internally. We should only worry about writing the messages. So all this other structure is something like ad hoc for us. So it should happen by somebody else. Why should we spend our energy in doing this? So this is a very obvious problem with System.out.println, this additional information, which is very useful, okay, which service it is, which thread is executing it, which class has written that. So it is completely missing. So that is one major disadvantage using a System.out.println. Additional information is missing. That is point number one. Okay. Now let's understand another major problem with System.out.println. Okay. Let's say for example, a developer is writing code, let's say a method, and this method is having multiple loops. Let's say here you write a System.out.println. Okay. Inside that you have a for loop. Let's say I going from whatever 1 to 100, or let's say 1 to 10. And inside this you have another nested loop for I equal to, let's say, 1 to 10, or j equal to 1 to 10 here. So let's say some nesting loop is there. Now, some time ago we said logging is important for tracing the flow of the application. Now just imagine if this kind of code you have written, and now we say put some logging in. Developer might put some log, right? System.out.println, this one log here, and inside this one log, because now that person wants to do some testing. Now automatically what is going to happen? Let's say this kind of code is running into production. For one time, if this method executes, it is going to print this one time. This for loop runs 10 times. It is going to print this 10 times. And it is going to print this j, okay, 10 into 10, 100 times. Right? Every for loop and 1 to j. It is going to run 10 into 10, 100 times. That means if one request is executing this method for one time, it is going to do it 1 plus 10 plus 100 log statements. These many number of statements it will be coming. Okay. Now point is, if this statement happens and it goes to production, automatically so many big number of files. Let's say you store all this information in a file. So your file size will become so much huge. So that is another problem. So developer might put these statements because logging is important, and it is increasing the file size. And you have to know this, logs will be saved in some files. Now, sometimes client might give a situation, don't delete these files for the next 10 years or for the next 20 years. Or some people will say for the lifetime of the project. So it completely depends on what log policy is there by your company. But logs needs to be saved. Needs to be saved for long time, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, depends upon logging policy. Now just imagine if you are putting those many number of log statements for one method, one request is printing around 111 times. You can imagine, and you have to save that for like 10 years. When many requests are running this kind of method, the file size will become huge. So now that is a problem. So this is another issue with System.out.println. Yes, it is printing the values. But what if you don't want this information in production? Okay, let me tell you a simple thing. What is going to happen? How a conversation will go between a team member and let's say a manager. So initially team member is going to write all this. And now as a manager, we are more concerned even this long-term perspective of the project. So we will say, hey, don't write this kind of log statement one time because it is printing like 100 times. The file size is filling up too fast, and no, don't do that. So then a developer might say, hey, but we need this information. So I say, but somehow in production, you should not use it. Then the developer say, but I need it during my development and testing time to see what kind of code is available here. So then what kind of solution will happen? I will say, whatever you want to do in non-prod, that is okay. But in production, this change should never go because it is filling up the file sizes in a fast manner. So during code review, people will spot these kind of things and they will guide you, okay, no, don't do it like this and this is risky. But just imagine if this kind of conversation is happening. As a developer, you are saying, I want this in non-prod because it helps me in my testing, but we cannot move it in prod. So as a developer, what you are supposed to do, maybe you need to write this first, test it in non-production, but before you merge it into integration branch, okay, you have to remove all these kind of statements. Nothing but double work you have to do. So System.out.println is not that flexible that in non-prod do it differently, in prod do it differently. So this is second major problem with System.out.println. You cannot differentiate the statements based upon environment. Okay, you System.out.println, okay, it will print the value, but you cannot differentiate based on environments. Okay, on which environment to print, which not to print. This logging software that we use or logging libraries that we use, that is going to provide that mechanism. Okay, which statement should be printed in non-prod, which statement should be printed in prod. So again, second major advantage working with System.out.println. Okay. So, and yes, there are some other things also. Okay, logging is more faster. System.out.println is going to be slow in nature. So these other advantages are also there. Okay. So I have put in one document, okay, where we are going to walk through this while we are working on today's topic. Okay. So the major problems you need to understand is, yes, there is a pattern problem. System.out.println writes everything. Logging level problems, nothing but this kind of problem. If it is written, it is going to print. You cannot differentiate between environments. Okay, I don't want this in prod, but it should run it in non-prod. You have to write it, you have to delete it. So it's not flexible. And the third is the default nature is write it on console. Okay, so whatever this console is there, it will write it there. But for logging, we need more mechanisms. Saving it into files, okay. Sometimes what you will do is exceptions you will write into a different file, maybe error.log file, and rest of the logs will be in a separate file. Okay, application.log file, rest of the logs. Sometimes you want that HTTP service engine related log you want in a separate file. So you never know, this kind of flexibility might be required. System.out.println, it basically will do one way of saving information. But in projects, depending upon situations, you might want that some of the Java classes, whatever statement you want, you write it in a different log file. Your rest of application will have central information. Maybe DAO related, you want a separate log file, DAO.log, so that you can do easy investigation. So this kind of flexibility is never possible with System.out.println. Different Java classes, different packages, okay, want to write the information in different log files. Okay, logging solution is going to give you this flexibility. And these are some very common things which are needed for every project. So System.out.println cannot be used. Okay, so one important thing, a pattern is a problem. Second important thing, environment specific, you want certain statements to run, that's not possible. Okay, environment specific, you want to print statements, okay, that's not possible. You can maybe try to do some hacks and all, but again, it's like unnecessary. You're doing it, it should be very straightforward. So this is the second problem. Okay, third one, it writes to console or one place, console writing everything together. Okay, you cannot define that logs of one Java class should be written in one specific file. You cannot do that. So automatically These are major problems. Another thing is it is a bit slow in nature. We need some high performing library which can do this stuff. So whenever during interview you are speaking about what is the problem of System.out.println, just stick with these basics and explain them with certain examples. And once we discuss the solutions for this using logging, you will have the comparison. If without logging solution, okay, what are the problems, and with logging solution, how do you solve the problems? Okay, fine. So now we are at the first part. SOP is not good for the projects. Okay, we need a logging solution. Are we clear with the problems? When I was starting my career in IT, right, with Java during development time, so somehow we have liking towards System.out.println. So I was always trying to justify my mind, whatever logging can do, somehow we can do it here with System.out.println. The mind was always thinking in that when I was starting my career. But as I gain more maturity, this is very obvious. Environment specific logs you cannot write. That additional information, now with System.out.println, you can put some double quotes, you can do some hacks, but you have to work more hard for it. It should happen by default. Why are you supposed to do all that? Developer focuses on development. So please note, these are some very obvious problems. And then one time you write, it will write at one place. You cannot write it in multiple files. And that flexibility is also something which is required. So once I understood these things, then I can very strongly say, no, System.out.println is not supposed to be used in production. So, but for that, yes, some maturity was required. But yes, now I can able to share that with you confidently. Okay, fine, guys. Are we clear with this problem with System.out.println? Just stick with this 3, 4. There will be a list of many. Main understanding you should have, that is very clear. Okay, sure. Thanks for confirmation. Now, how are we going to solve this one? Let's go, guys. We will open a diagram here. We will open a diagram. So there are multiple logging solutions. Please understand, it's not just one. Okay. So in the market, so if you don't want to use System.out.println, then what are you supposed to do? Okay. So in the market, multiple logging libraries are available. For Java related, we will speak about. So something is like, let's say, log4j. Next, people realized, so log4j is very old. Okay, when I was starting my career 15 years ago, at that time log4j was very popular. Okay, then over a period of these 15 years, improvements came on top of log4j, and they have given a new better version called as log4j2. Okay, so in almost majority of the projects in the current times, if they are using this logging framework, they prefer to go ahead with log4j2. Okay. Next, there is another popular logging framework in the market, or logging library. You can call it as logging framework also, logging library also. People use this term very interchangeably. There is another one called as Logback. So means instead of System.out.println, you can use the classes and the methods of this or this or this, and there are several others. Java has also given some inbuilt logging. Java inbuilt logging is also available. Next, Apache company has given some logging, Apache logging. So like this, there are many solutions of logging. Okay. Now each is going to have its own Java class and method. Java class and method. Now they can write whatever, right? It is their package structures, their method names. Now just imagine. Now as a developer, you are supposed to do these things. Work with any one of these. In the same project, you don't use 2, 3 variations. First, please understand. Okay. So let's try to take a note about it. We need a logging solution. In market, many libraries or frameworks are available. Okay. Now, for one project, you choose one framework or library. One. Okay, okay, fine. Now let's say you're finalized. I want to use log4j. Okay, say you want to use log4j2. So you need to understand what class methods to use for doing logging. And then just imagine in our entire project, every single class we have done logging. In this service class you go, logging is everywhere. Logging is everywhere. That means all throughout your project, in all of the Java classes, you will be writing statements using this class and method, right? All throughout the project, logging is happening. Okay, now let me give you a situation. People realized that there is a problem with log4j2, and in the market, a better logging solution came. Always this happens, right? People evolve and then come up with better solutions. Now just imagine if you want to switch, to a new or different logging solution, what you have to do? You need to update all the Java classes in your project, right? Because you have written everywhere, you are importing this one. So let's say you are doing all import, and then whatever is the class of this log4j2, you have done that importing. Now, when you are changing to the new thing, you need to modify each and every Java class. So that means if you choose one framework, logging framework, switching to other is almost not possible. People will never do it. Who is going to modify all the Java classes and keep doing that? So it is very hard activity and people will not do that. So what does it mean? If you choose one framework, you need to live with one framework. This kind of problem IT started encountering. Okay, so you need to update all the Java classes. So majority of project will stick with one logging solution itself, even if better solutions are there in market. It's very obvious, right? Think about the pain as a developer. Think like a developer. You need to modify every file of your full application and all the statements where you use this log. Now you need to modify it. So it becomes really, and what if they do give different method names? So the amount of work is too much high. So that is a pain. So IT industry has solved this pain. Okay. So IT industry has given us a solution that you implement that solution and you can switch between any of these logging providers. So one standard way of coding, using that standard way of coding, now you can use log4j2. Next, without any code change, you can use Logback. Without any code change, you can use whatever other libraries that you want. And that standard way of coding is nothing but called as SLF4J. SLF4J. So SLF4J is a standard way of logging. SLF4J is a standard way of logging. So what developers are supposed to do is, developers should only learn how to do logging as per SLF4J. And internally, all these guys, all the top providers of the market are giving their solutions. Means you just need the jar file of logback in your class path, and you should use the code given by SLF4J. So you can imagine this is kind of an interface. This is kind of an interface. So it is going to have whatever your interface name, your method names. Implementation of this interface is provided by these guys. So you can imagine here it's going to be available in some interface.jar file, or let's say SLF4J.jar file. So they have defined the standard SLF4J.jar file. So package name is standard, class name is standard, method name is standard. All these people imported that and then they created their own log files. Let's say log4j.jar. This guy will create, I'm just giving examples of this name. log4j2.jar. This guy might give logback.jar, where they will write some code, let's say my logger, which implements whatever this guy has done. So what is happening? As a developer, you only work with this, but in your project, you need to put this jar file also, this jar file also. So internally it is going to happen, but what a developer is supposed to do? Developer only works with the names mentioned here. Internally in your class path, you will only put this other jar. If you want to change from one provider to another, you can easily just add that jar, remove this jar, and configuration is ready. You don't have to do any Java code change. Maybe sometimes in property file, you can configure I am using log4j2 or I am using logback. So, but Java code change remains neutral. You don't have to change anything in Java. So that is where SLF4J is a standard way of developing a logging solution. Okay, so guys, that is where this is the need of SLF4J. This is the need of SLF4J. One standard way of implementing, okay, logging solution in your project. Okay, so a developer should only learn SLF4J style of classes and methods. Internally, the logging libraries will take effect. You need to put jar of both SLF4J and your logging library. Okay, this is how SLF4J is a standard way. It's a very good solution if you really think about it, right? You just have to learn this, work with this, and that's it. Now, the good part, okay, with Spring Boot application, they have done some default. So you don't have to additionally add any of these things. Spring Boot application provides default support for SLF4J with logback. So we need to understand this is a very powerful mechanism, and logback is developed by the people of this log4j itself. So this is a more modern, latest approach of doing the logging in the project, and they have done this work logging since a very long time. They have given a new library, and Spring Boot is giving this itself as default, because for all the latest modern application, people are preferring to go ahead with logback. Okay. However, if you are too much attached with log4j, so you should use log4j2. Okay, not the log4j version. You should use log4j2. But we will be continuing to use SLF4J with logback, and we don't need to add any additional jar also for this. Spring Boot by default, the starter, is giving you this kind of an support. And that is the reason right from the day one, we are using that itself without any additional configuration. It is all effective in our project. We are using SLF4J with logback. Okay. Now, if you go to this, there is a documentation, nice documentation available about this. SLF4J, it's a logging abstraction used to write code independently of any specific logging implementation. Log4j is a legacy logging framework that is still widely used, but it has been replaced by log4j2, which addresses some of the performance and security concerns which were popping up in log4j. Next, logback. It is a modern, faster, more flexible logging solution and often preferred over log4j. Okay, so specially used along with SLF4J. So we are going to use this kind of a solution. Okay. So next, SLF4J team has given a website. You can spend some few minutes here, and on this website they have given some, I think, diagrams also. Just observe here. As an application developer, let's say you're writing your Spring Boot application. What you need to do is you only work with SLF4J jar. means one standard way of coding. Internally, different people might implement it differently. Okay. For example, logback under your SLF4J logback might be there. SLF4J reload 4J, and which is working with reload 4J. So this is another logging framework, reload 4J. Next, working with JVM, Java related logging solution. Okay. Next, multiple. Now it could be anything. Now just the point is, as an application developer, so they have not given much more examples, but yes, Apache, this, that, they have really built a very nice flexible system that internally any provider, all the popular provider support is available. So as Java developer, you work only with SLF4J library and it is available in this jar file. However, the implementation they might provide separately. So you need this also, you need this also. And we already have both of the support in our Spring Boot application. Okay, very good. Now comes the next topic. Okay, we need a class which we can use for logging and we need a method. Okay, now question, how do you create this class? Which class you should use? How do you create object of this class? So one of the method way is you have to manually create the object of this class, which is that. Just observe in their documentation, they have already provided. Let's go to the beginning like this. Simply using this kind of statement, you can create the object of this. Okay. So we need an object of logger. Okay, what is logger? It is this one. We need some object of logger. org.slf4j.logger. How do you create? Okay, in SLF4J itself, they have given another logger factory.getLogger. Whichever Java class in which you are defining this logger, you need to pass that Java class. So this is how, which class you are supposed to use. Okay, you are supposed to use org.slf4j.logger. Okay. Let's see what exactly this guy is. Is it a class or is it an interface? Let's check it out. We'll go into our code, Control-Shift-T. This first one, it's an interface. So they have provided that kind of abstract definition. Okay, what methods should be available, and then the child classes are the other people maybe, right? So by this way, we just need to use org.slf4j.logger. When you call this method logger factory, looks like they are doing factory design pattern implementation, which internally is going to give you the proper object of logger, right? So factory design pattern kind of is being implemented here. So it is going to give you a proper object. So you are giving some parameter. It will create a proper object internally of logger, depending upon which logging library you are using. So logback will be available. So accordingly, it will give that object for hello world and return it back. So factory method design pattern is implemented here also. And then you can use this logger and call some methods which is defined here. So how do you, which class do you use? Okay, we need an object of org.slf4j.logger. It's an interface. So a child of this is required. We don't care about which child object is coming. It will somehow come to us internally. That's also abstracted from us. Very good. Okay, but that object which is coming will have support for logback and somehow refer to our Java class. So that is what it is about. Okay, very good. Now, what is the another way of doing it? Our Lombok way of working. Lombok is not doing anything different, guys. Whatever this statement is there, Lombok is doing only that kind of statement itself. Okay, for example, let us do these things programmatically. What I will do, we will call this, let's go in code, payment controller. We have this statement, right? Now let's define one more logger object here. Control-Shift-O, org.slf4j. Okay. Next, whichever Java class where you are defining this logger, you need to use that class. So payment controller, logger you have defined. and then yes, make this private. You're accessing it only from within your Java class, and you can simply call the method. Right now for method, let's simply call it as logger.info. Same stuff. Okay. For testing purpose, let's not keep calling this service again and again, because we are trying to learn only logging. So I'm just making some dummy arrangements, new, like this, response.set transaction reference. Okay, set transaction reference. Next, response.set status. Let's say created. Again, just doing this so that we don't get into all the other logs of DB insertion and other things. And let's do find response.set redirection URL. Okay, fine. So that's it. One we have used log, another one we have used logger, and we are just returning this kind of a dummy object, printing it, giving it back. Okay, let's test it once. Okay, so this is coming. That's okay. But yeah, our focus is to just test these three statements. So here is System.out.println. Before that, two statements should be what we have logged. Just observe. This is the logger object which we manually created. Observe. These two things are one and the same. Timestamp, info, okay, whatever is the process, service, thread, package, the class where we are creating this, and then the message. So one way is we can manually create the object like this. The second way, okay, why do you even want to do that? Simply use SLF4J annotation, @SLF4J annotation. If we do, then internally Logback is going to create an object of this logger for us for this class itself, and a variable will be internally created with the name log. So we don't have to then manually create it. Same thing is going to be done, but by Logback, and the variable name is available log. We can directly use it. Okay, so when we are doing logger.info, we create it. So another way is this one. Okay, so guys, what are the two ways to create? Approach number one is you manually create logger object. Okay, approach number two is use Logback. And it is providing @SLF4J object. With this one, it is going to give a log object reference. So that's it. So two simple ways of doing it. That goes as part of how to create the object. Next, what method to call? Okay, guys, are we clear with this? Simple two ways of object creation. Are we clear with this, guys? Fine. Now, next part. One by one, more and more complexity will start coming. New things will come. If you are first timer for all this thing, much more new things will keep coming. But step by step, understand. Now, which method to use? Let's understand the second one. Which method to use? Right from the beginning, we are always using info method. If you go back to the code, we are always using info method. But now let me tell you, there are multiple methods which we can use for logging. Okay, so what SLF4J related methods are available? So it is something like trace. Trace is one of the method. Debug is another method. Third, info is one of the method. Next, warn is another method. Error is another method. So you can imagine the way System.out.println is available. System.out.println. If you know, there is another method also called as System.out.print. So they have also given multiple methods, right? So like this, these people have also given multiple methods. Now that means you can write something like this. So we will not be creating our own object here. We will use what these guys have created. So I'm deleting this and I'm deleting this also. We will use SLF4J related, logback related object. Okay. Now, what we will do is, let's use all these methods. Log dot, let's say trace. Okay, trace method invoked. Okay, so trace method invoked. Next, debug method invoked. Next, info method invoked. I'm just printing it. One, using GitHub Copilot, doing it quickly. Okay, so these kind of 5 methods they have provided. Using this, we can do the logging. Okay, and these 5 methods are nothing but called as log levels. Log levels. So what are the log levels? Trace, debug, info, warn, and error. These are multiple log levels. To adhere by these log levels, we have these 5 methods with the same naming: trace, debug, info, warn, and error. Next comes the question: in which situations you should use what method? Okay, so right from the beginning, we are always using info throughout our entire code. But now the situation is different. There are multiple methods. And for different purpose, you need to use different methods. Okay, what is that? Let's understand. Error means whenever there is any kind of an exception, something has gone wrong. So for any exception, okay, use error as the method. Okay, for example, if you go to HTTP service engine of processing service, just see, wherever this exception was thrown, you're dealing with error. We used log.error. Similarly, even this fallback is kind of an error processing itself. We are calling it log.error. So error method is supposed to be used whenever there is any kind of exception and you want to capture that information that something has gone wrong. Use the error method. Okay. Next, one method we will come to it, but let's understand info. Your thought process should be like this: info statements will be printed in production. So whatever you write it with info, know that that is going to be available in production, and it is basically information. Info means information, and these statements will be available in production system. So that is where we have to use info statements. Okay, debug statements. These statements will not be printed in production. Please understand, as a junior, you need to know, okay, even though in the code, let's say payment controller, even though in the code you have written this line number 40, if this line number 40 is running in the production system, it is not going to print the value. So when do you use debug? Okay, only for non-production testing. Use debug for testing only till non-production. You don't have to delete it in the code. It is going to be available in the code, just that it will not print the values. So it's not like System.out.println. Okay, first you need to write, then you have to delete. No, you need to keep it, and this line 40 will go till production also, and it is not going to be printed there. So how do you use debug? You want something only during the non-prod system, you have to use debug for that. Info means, yes, important information should be there. important variable values, an important trace of the application, and know that it is going to be printed in production system. Okay, like this is available. Next, trace. Trace means it's more granular than debug. Okay, means what? It will by default not be available even in the non-prod system. Let's say if you write a statement like this trace, it will not be visible even in the non-prod system. Okay, you need to do some special arrangement to even see these kind of statements. So how do you use it? You use it for granular than even debug. By default, it will not be printed even in non-prod environment. You need to put additional configuration to see trace statements. So definitely this is never going to production, never goes to production. Okay. Now, what is actually happening here? Every method has a different scenario in which you are supposed to use it. Let's say you want to print a statement, but it is only for your debugging purpose. You don't want to take it to production. You need to use a debug method. Something even more deeper than debug. By default, not even visible in the non-prod. You want that level, you can use trace. Generally, for regular applications that you build, you will avoid using trace. For majority of the projects, almost 99% chances you will never use trace. But if you want to very detail capture something, then only trace comes in picture. Most of the times you will use these. Especially you will use debug, info, and error. Warn is also used, not very commonly. What is warn? Now guys, as a developer, you need to go based upon your intuition. Something which is warning, kind of concerning. Okay, right now it is not a problem, but it can become a problem. So something like that, you put it under warn section. Okay, something is concerning. Look into it. Okay, otherwise it can become a problem in future. These kind of statements you will put under warn. Okay, for example, how? For example, let's say if it is taking, you're doing API, or let's say your method is taking 2.5 seconds to process. Okay, on regular terms, it might be taking 0.5 seconds to process. All of a sudden, it has started taking more time. Now that is a warning. Hey, something has really gone wrong. So you can put that kind of statement. Or you made an API call and you did not get the response as expected. Okay, maybe that is a bit concerning to you. You can put a kind of a warning that these guys have 3 times replied with this kind of an error message, means it's a warning, look into it. So again, depending upon your project situations, wherever you feel kind of a warning, concern, you will use this. So concern is not information. Information means, okay, everything is fine and I'm printing the values. Something concerning, you go ahead with warning. Something sure shot error, you use it as an error. So like this, different methods are there. Depending upon what you are doing in the project, you need to work with these. As a developer, you will use debug very commonly, info very commonly, error very commonly. Trace and warn are special cases. If you get a need somewhere, you can use these 2 things. Okay, fine. So that is about log levels. Okay, fine. Next, just know this. Currently, we have written these 5 statements, right? Let me call this from Postman. Other topic is coming, so please be focused. Observe, we have written 5 statements, and now we are calling. After this, first is System.out.println. So let's say this is the starting. After this, what happened, guys? Only 3 statements got printed. Info, warn, and error. Trace and debug are not printed. So even though we have written it in the code, observe, info is invoked, warn is invoked, error is invoked. So this is printed, this is printed, this is printed. These two are not printed. What does this mean? Oh, we need to understand some more concepts here. So even though the statements are written, what we observe, only this much is printed, top two are not printed. Means something else is going on here. Okay, you need to now understand a new factor called as, okay, there is some external configuration which defines which log statements or levels to print. So some external configuration is controlling which log level should print. Okay, and default external configuration is info. Okay, so first thing we need to understand, even though we have written this, it is not printing everything. Okay, what does that mean? There is some different thing happening here. What is that different? Some external configuration is there, because of which we are seeing only this much. And the default external configuration is set to info. Now you have to understand even one more term. Okay, there is order for these log levels. Okay, what does this mean? It means if external configuration is info, then info and above methods will be printed. What does this mean? If the external configuration is info, then info method will be printed. And now this is the order of your log levels. Info will be printed, warn will be printed, error will be printed. Info will be printed, warn will be printed, and error will be printed. Error is going to be printed. Now think about this. Okay, tell me, if external configuration is debug, what do you think will happen? If external configuration is debug, then debug and above will be printed. Okay, all log levels with debug and above will be printed. It means debug method will also be printed, info will be printed, warn will be printed, error will be printed. Nothing but there is an order for these log levels. Okay, let's take another example. If external configuration is warn, then all levels with warn and above will be printed. Warn and above means only these two. If external configuration is error, that is another thing we need to understand, that external configurations control which statement should be printed. Second thing you need to understand, there is an order for all these methods. So greater than equal to that will be executed. So if you use error, then all levels with error and above. So there is nothing above error. So only error will be printed. And likewise, if your configuration is trace, so trace and above is going to be printed. So please remember these things also. Then all the levels with trace and above, and trace is the very basic level. So means everything is going to be printed. If external configuration is set up to trace, it means everything is going to be printed. Otherwise, if you set up to debug, it means debug and above will be printed. Set up to info means info and above, and then warn, and then error. Like this, external configuration control how the statement needs to be printed. That is what. Let's try to write one-liner about it. Okay, external configuration controls which, okay, we have already, there is some external configuration which defines which log levels to print. Default is info. Now you need to understand, all the non-production systems, external configuration is going to be debug. Please understand this. For all non-production systems, which means dev, QA, UAT, everywhere, okay, default configuration is debug only. This is how we will set up. For production, it is going to be like this. For production system, default external configuration duration will be info. That is where info and above will be printed in production, and debug and above is going to be printed in the non-prod systems. Okay, people will not set external configurations to warn or error, because no, it's not going to be like that. They will either set here or they will set here. Okay, fine. Next, let's understand. The external configurations are of two types. Okay, external configurations are of two types. Okay, one is called as root level configuration, and second one is your application level. Nothing but your Java code which you are doing, or let's just say application level, Java code level. Okay, so let's understand. This is also very interesting. Okay, root level means it applies for everybody. It applies for everybody. Okay, what does this mean? Let's understand with a diagram. It applies for everybody means what? Okay, let's say you are building, right? From the week one, we are saying we are building a Spring Boot application using Spring Boot as a framework. Nothing but we want to build a project. We want to build a web application in which we will be writing some of our Java code. So some method is going to be available, but we want to make this method as a REST API so that external guys can call our methods. In order to do that, we need some framework related code, and that is where we have Spring Boot related web related jars available. So we get multiple .jar files of Spring Boot. Okay, now we know this thing. Whenever a request comes to the system, whenever a request comes to our system, first the request is going to be processed by Spring Boot related code. So first it will come to the Tomcat, and then it is going to go to the Spring Boot related code. We already know that. And then Spring Boot is going to come to a point where it will be calling our controller. We know all these things already. Where it is going to be calling our controller, and then the rest of the layers will be triggered. Okay, fine, we know that. Okay, but what point we are trying to make here, please understand. For every incoming request, the code of Spring Boot is running, your code is running, and we have added so many other jar files. If you go to the pom.xml, many other jar files we have added. So all those jar file code is also going to execute in your entire project. Maybe service layer, jar files, multiple things we have added. And that is what point you need to understand. Okay, when your application runs, it is not just your code, but it is the code of all the jar files which execute. This includes framework, this includes your stuff, also other jar files plus your things. So what does this mean? When you run your Spring Boot application, okay, code of Spring Boot framework runs, plus your developed code runs, plus all jars which are there in class path, okay, all relevant code will run. For example, yesterday we saw, right, while we were trying to do that Eureka server and client communication, every 5 seconds some eviction was running. Where is that? Some other jar file internally doing some work continuously. So that means multiple code is continuously running when you run your Spring Boot application. Now, in this code which these other people are running, let's say, so one is our code, another is code written by all the other jar files which are there in our class file. So when these jar files run, they also print log statements, right? Because they are also coders, they also need log statements. So when the code from other jar files run, they also print log statements. So basically, when you configure something at root level, it means it applies for everybody. It applies for your code. It applies for all the code of all the jars which are there in your class path. So that is what root level configuration. It applies for everybody. Okay. And that is the reason root is always going to be set. Root is always going to be set in info mode only. You don't change it. So external configuration root will always be set up to info, because if you change this, you start seeing the code of all these other people as well. Okay, we can do that experiment. Okay. Now, how do you put this external configuration? So we will need to discuss that. How to do this external configuration. One way is directly through property file. Another way is you can write some XML and put the configuration there. XML is more handy in this way. So for many projects, people will use XML based approach. So we will also be using XML based approach. However, for simple testing, we can use property file. So let's first use a property file. Later, we will be using XML approach to do logging configuration. Okay, fine. Now, what is the property file change we need to do for enabling root configuration? Okay, so now our next task is change the external configuration for root. For root, default is info. Okay, did you ever think about this? If you make any change here, right from day one, it is happening. Spring Boot application restarts. Did you notice? Even right now, it is always printing info statements. Whenever Spring Boot's application is starting, it is always printing info statement. And these could be several other jar files. Generic scope, Tomcat web server, standard service. These are defined all by internal guys itself. There are some jars in our class path. They have printed these statements. They have printed these statements. And as part of that, it is all in info. One of us is V also. For example, HTTP service engine. Looks like on startup, we are also printing one of the statements. Info mode. On startup, we are printing HTTP service engine initialized with REST client. This kind of message we have printed. So even that is visible. Okay, processing service. I think something on startup. Yeah, this message is there. But the point here is during startup, our code, which we have written during startup, that is coming, plus the code written by other people, Tomcat web server. Okay, this conditional evaluation delta logging, they are all coming. Now observe this interesting thing. Thoda sa a bit tricky hai, so thoda focus here. We are trying to dissect a thing here. It is even printing this payment processing service application. Array, we have not written any statement here. This is our class only, right? Okay, payment processing service application. Just observe. We did not write any logger statement here. How can there be a logger where they are putting some statement like started so and so application in 2.5 seconds? Where is all this printed? And we have not written any of that statement. So you need to understand, when we call this run method, internally, these guys are creating a logger object for this class, and then those guys are printing it. So sometimes this kind of approach can happen. Okay, internally, they took this logger class, created an object of that, and used it for printing this statement. So if you get inside this run kind of method, Spring Boot application :run, okay, here somewhere inside, they should have all those log statements enabled. Let's say your run method, we are just going inside. Okay, somewhere these log statements should be available. What is it? Okay, let's say started. I will just try to search it. Let's see whether it is this. Okay, started. How much time it is taking, they have calculated. Just observe this one. Somewhere, yeah, this is what it is. So they created something called as startup info log, and whatever is our class that we provided, they used somehow that class, and they have called internally some method called as, okay, log started. And just see, they have done nothing but in .info. So they took our logger and then using that logger, they called the in method, and in that get started message they have written. Just if you check this thing out, the full message they have prepared using simple append logic. Okay, what kind of action is there? So our action came like maybe started. Okay, started, append application name. So first started, then our application name is this one. Okay, in is this statement, in, and then how many number of seconds, millis, or how many seconds it took, it converted millis into seconds, and then they printed this one. And just observe, this is how they created the message to be printed. And this message they returned back. Just see, process running for total how much time, uptime they calculated. So basically they are using our logger object, and they prepared this kind of a statement called as get started message, and then they are printing it on the low place console using the info method. And because it is info, root is unable to info. That is where we are seeing this really interesting part, right? So please be aware, we are not directly using it, but internally those guys have done the info logging where this message is being printed. But the main point here is, whenever we are restarting the application, our code is running, Spring code is running, and whatever statements are in info and above, they all are being printed because root level setting is for info. Okay, guys, are we clear with this? That is root level power. All the code info and above is going to be printed. Awesome. Okay, chalo, let's go further. So the point is, once you get control on your code, you will have to spend some time in understanding maybe framework. Now just imagine you get to a new project, forget about framework. Framework is like code developed by some other developer. Let's say you join your team. In your team itself, there are 20 developers. You want to understand what code they have written. You have to learn how to navigate through code. Which method is calling what method, what is the child, where they are printing, how the logs and the code make sense. So understanding all this is a developer responsibility. So even though you're not getting into depth of Spring framework code, but other developer code you have to anyways look. So you need to learn how to investigate this flow. Okay, fine. Let's come back. So the point here is, okay, we need to do some logging change. How to do logging change? Okay, default is info. We need to change. Property file is one of the way we can override this configuration. Okay, let's do that part. Okay, so how to do that? You can go to ChatGPT. It is going to give you the key to use. It is something just like this. Where is it? This one. You just need to use this key, logging.level.root. So using this, you are changing the root configuration. Okay, how exactly we can do? Let's say if you use this kind of statement, go to local property file, and in the end, just put the statement, debug. Just observe, so far, whenever we added any statement, we saw only info. Now we are changing the root to debug. Do a save. Just observe, debug statement started coming up. And just observe, it's continuously running. Now, point is, this is always there. Just observe. There is some RMI TCP which is always running. jdk.internal.http client. This code is continuously running in your Spring Boot application. sun.rmi.transport. It is continuously running. Just observe. Every second, basically, it's printing. So they have written some code internally. Every second, it is doing some activity. It's running. So far, we did not see it because they wrote all those statements in debug. And we are not interested to see what they are doing. Debug means their non-prod environment. So when they were doing development, they needed all these statements there. So we don't want to see all that. So if you change it into debug, you will see all this work of the other people, which will still be like not required for you. For that reason, root level, you always set up as info only. You always set up as info only, like this. Okay. Let's see. Now, once it is restarted, everything is only info. Unnecessary logs are not visible. So you need to be careful. Root is always going to be info only. Okay. So that is what. Please be aware of this. And because it is default, you don't even have to specify it. So even if you do the comment, it is going to behave like info only. Okay. So that is how root level logger is going to apply. Okay. But let's say for our testing, we want our logger to print even these things, trace and debug. Because in our non-prod, we want it as debug. In our trace, let's say, if you want to detail test it, we want to enable trace. So how do you really do this? For that, the second configuration is required. So two configurations we said. One is root level configuration. The second one is, okay, application level. How do you do application level? Okay, using your package structure, you can do application level logging. Okay, what does that mean? Let's say, for example, you want all the Java code which is written by us should be set at a trace mode. So what we will do is, we will go to our base package. What is our base package? com.hulkhirtech.payments. So we will go to our base package and we need to enable package till this point. So there is going to be some setting. For example, logging.level.this equal to debug. So what will happen? All the Java classes which is inside this package and its sub packages, they all will be now printed debug and above. Nothing but we are activating debug mode. So all the debug and above is going to be printed for all the Java classes which are under this and its sub packages. Let's try to understand. For all Java classes which are under this package and its sub packages, recursively sub packages, all debug and above log statements will be printed. This is how you do it. Okay, so what exactly? Let's say if I have not made any typo, logging.level. So logging.level. Logging.level. And then you put whatever is your package name, base package, and then you define the level there. Okay, let's try to do this. So we go here. So application level log, how do you change? You change it something like this. Okay, you change it something like this. Okay, so this is fixed. Then you define the package and then you print it. Okay, for example, now let's save it. Observe, interesting thing has happened here. There is one debug statement for processing service. Nothing but in the Spring Boot code, looks like they have also written some other place debug statement. Okay, and which is running with Spring Boot, whatever, some version. Okay, so they are using some debug statements here. Running with Spring Boot 3.4 and then Spring version is 6.2. So they are putting that statement so in debug. So that means our statement which was there in debug is automatically printed also. Okay, and then remaining everything is basically info and above. Now if you do the testing here, if you call this, let's do the quick test. Observe, in payment controller, we have written these 4 statements. This time debug statement is also coming. Debug info warn error. So application level logs will be controlled by using this kind of configuration. If you change it to trace, then it becomes trace and above. Let's do that. Local. You change this into trace. Save it. So test it again. Observe. Now trace and above is coming. Trace debug info warn error. Next, you change it into debug. You change it into debug. What happens? Debug and above. You change it into info. What happens? Info and above. We already have discussed it. I'm practically showing so that it runs in your mind. Okay, what exactly is going on here? So there is an order for these external configurations. Control what order should be taken. So this is application level control. You choose your package and accordingly you can print it. So when you say info, so info and above is printed. If you say warn, then warn and above is going to be printed. Okay. Now infos will not be printed anymore. Now warn and above is going to be printed. Just see, warn and error is printed. If you show only error, so there is an order, then only error will be printed. There is nothing above error, so there is only error which is printed. In Log4j and all, they had something called as fatal also, but those things are not there with SLF4j. So only till error it is available. Okay, fine, just see only error. So what people will do is, they will set application level logger external configuration to debug mode for non-prod systems. Root is going to continue to be info mode. Application will be in debug mode. This is how the non-prod system is going to be. Okay, whenever developer wants to test something at trace level, you need to explicitly change this into trace. Otherwise, it is not going to be visible for. So trace should definitely not go to production. But if you want trace for any case, you need to manually change it first into trace. Then only you have to do debugging. Then only you test. Otherwise, this will be debug. So this is what, let's try to take some conclusions about. Okay, so we will be having it as debug. Okay, so for all non-prod, root is info and your application level is set to debug. So all debug and above statements will be printed in non-prod. Next, for prod system, okay, both root and application level will be info only. This is how the setting is going to be done. Info only. So only info and above is going to be printed. Rest of the things will not be there. So every developer is supposed to know this thing. Okay, fine. Next, we said there are 2 aspects. We can control this logging configuration from property file. That's one way. The second way is from XML file. So when you're using Logback, you can have an XML file with this name. So by default, this is a default name. You can change it. If you're changing the name, then you need to configure it inside the Spring system. Okay, you have to provide a configuration. Okay, what is the name of your log file? But logback-spring.xml is the default name. If you put this XML in your project class path, Spring Boot is automatically going to read it. You don't have to put external configuration. If you're renaming this to something else, then in a property, you have to tell to the Spring, okay, which is your login configuration file. Okay, so please be aware, this is the default name. If you are using logback with Spring, default name is like this: XML configuration. Default file name, okay, for XML config, default file name is this one. Okay, if you want to change, so if you just create XML with name this and put in class path. What is putting in class path? Let's say something like src main resources folder, where we have put in the properties file. That resources folder is in class path, so it is Spring is also able to read the .properties file. So if you put it under this resources folder, then Spring Boot will automatically recognize this file and pick up the changes. Awesome. Okay, now you can rename it. You can rename it, but you have to additionally configure the new file name in your .properties file so that Spring can recognize this. Okay, fine, sure. So we will keep it the same. So what are we going to do? This file name that we have, we will be putting it under src main resources. So just observe here, guys. Let's minimize everything. Processing service, src main resources. Under the resources, let's put this new one. Right click, new file. Okay, file. Let's put this name. Make sure no spaces here and there. Copy paste exactly. I will upload this into Google Drive. Today is the last topic. So all the code which we did this week, I will create a separate folder. So Eureka related plus all the rest of the changes also, I will be putting it there. Okay, fine. Now next, we have turned off the Eureka change. So I have to re-enable it back again. But yes, I will do that and then I will upload it in a separate folder. Now let's open this configuration. Okay, let's first close all the folders. So let's open this, explore. Here, explore. This is the file. Right click, open with a Notepad++. Let's copy this. Let's put it here. Because it is XML, so XML is all about syntax. So this compilation problem was coming. Now it is gone. We changed it. Spring Boot application is running. Just observe. With this XML configuration, something changed. Okay, info is not coming in between now. It is coming at the beginning. Okay, and there are certain changes which has happened as soon as we applied this XML. Here, the full class names earlier o.s.b. something was coming. Now the full class names are visible. So that means this configuration has taken some effect. It has modified. Okay, if you observe, previously it was coming like this. Observe process ID, info, time, and in the time part, they had really plus in this manner. Okay, next, just observe this. They did not have Tomcat Web Server full package name. Now, okay, after adding our change, full package name is coming. So that means our configurations are taking some effect. Okay, so that is our next step. Add the XML to resources folder. Okay, notice the log statement pattern got changed. Okay, the log statement pattern got changed. Okay, very good. Next. Now, few things which we have already discussed. Let's look how it looks like XML. Okay, few things which we have already discussed. For example, just observe root level configuration. If you want to do, you will do it here. Application level you want to do, you will do it here. So there are tags. Root tag is for root level configuration, and logger application level you want to do, you will be doing it here. That's it. So root tag is available and logger tag is available. Root tag is for root configuration. Logger tag is for application level configuration. Okay, application level. Okay, guys, do you know this? There is an interesting configuration. First, let's do the root settings. Let's say we are changing the root. Let's go to this place. We will comment this property file so we can show that everything is coming from the XML configurations. Okay, just observe. You made the change, you are starting the system. Okay, let's go back here. com.halka.tech. This is the base, right? Further sub packages we said. So even .payments is a sub package under this one. So even if you use like this, it takes an effect. For example, let's say if you now have done this configuration like this, application level we are putting a debug, root is as info. Here we are. When you are doing the testing, let's call this. Let's see what has happened. Yes, debug info warn error is coming. So that means XML configuration took the effect. If you change this into info, let's say trace. You change it into trace. You call the method again. Just observe trace and above. So what did we realize? Spring Boot is able to read our file name, this one. Next, it is able to read this configuration and able to put effect into the system. So we are able to successfully see that. So just add this file logback-spring.xml under your resources. Spring Boot will automatically recognize it if it is available and then take the effect based upon configuration you have done here. Okay. Instead of calling it like this, we can put our entire base package. What is our entire base package? Till this one. So we can take it fully. Whatever is your package, you put that name here. It takes the effect fully. Okay. So let's restart it once more. We are doing trace and above. Call it. Go. Okay. Trace and above. Okay, fine. So this is the first observation there. First observation. Spring Boot is able to read the XML, and put the configurations into effect. This is happening, right? It is able to read, put it into effect. We experiment something and it is happening like that. Okay. Now guys, let's understand this one interesting thing. Application level logs does not even mean only your code changed. Okay, let's say for example, I am interested in dispatcher servlet. Okay, what kind of logging these people have done in dispatcher servlet? So we can even configure these kind of packages also. For example, now we are interested. Let's see, this is internal now. Spring Framework internal. Okay, we want to check something like this. What you will do is you copy this full as a new configuration. Okay, you copy the entire logger tag as a new configuration, and here you define, now I want change about this package and its sub packages. And I want to set that as a trace level. Okay, this is what we are trying to enable. And now let's check it out. Let's save these changes. Okay, just observe. Okay, let's just observe. This we have enabled as trace. These statements in trace has already come up during startup time. We did not write anything for trace during startup time. 3 statements are already visible here. Okay, it is done by whom? Let's look at it. Observe. org.springframework.web.servlet, and there are some more sub packages inside that, like function, support, router, functioning, and they have done some logging there. So with this experiment, what do we learn? Application level logs. You can, if you want, you can check other libraries also by just enabling that. Because if you turn for root, it opens for everybody. But if you're interested, let's say model mapper library, what kind of logs are coming only for model mapper, then you will specify here only model mapper. Why this packaging works? Because packaging is going to have a group ID which uniquely defines the company which has developed that library, and every company has a unique domain. That is where we can very much be assured in no other company of the world other than Spring related team can use this package org.springframework. It is taken by those guys. Like this, hulkhire.com, hulkhiretech.com is purchased by our company. So no other company can ever have this kind of package. So we are very sure if you are setting this up as package level, it will do it only for those packages only. Right? So that's the power. That's where packaging is working out nicely for the industry here. But okay, what did we learn here? The way we can set our code here, we can choose any other library also. It basically works. Just use the right package. Okay. And what more, right? So how the changes will be applied? Initially, everything will be root. Then whatever you are specifically defining, that will override the default root configuration, right? So earlier, everything is root. Now you are saying, but for this package, make it trace. For this package, make it like this. So everything is going to be info only, but these two packages will behave like trace. Like this configuration will be there. Let me put this example in our notepad. Okay, sometimes for debugging, you might have to enable at those logs. Let's say model mapper, you want to know internally what's going on because something is not right. So you might enable model mapper in this manner. So please be aware of that. Okay, so let's understand this learning. For application level logs, you can set up packages of your project as well as of other jars which are there in the class path. Super, super, super. Okay, guys, are you getting whatever we discussed so far? Can you put a quick understanding score about it? Let's put a quick understanding score about it. What is your current understanding score? Okay, let's say 5. And guys, even today is the last day, and even today also we have important things to discuss. I'm telling you guys, all 2 months, every topic is important. If you have missed any of the topic, watch it again, do the practicals again, master yourself in all these things. This is base things for building projects, and then showcase this knowledge confidently during interview. Okay? While doing this revision, some of the members came and they explained they have done pretty strong preparation. Some people have some area of improvement also, but yes, those who work, they will get better. That's what it is. Okay? So let's continue further with the next topic. More things are there. One by one, we are getting into the topic. Okay, fine. So let's go. Great, 5s and 4s. That's pretty good. Let's continue further. So we are learning XML configurations. In that, we understood, okay, the root tag is for root level. Logger tag is for application level. Now we need to understand another thing. What is this appender configuration? Okay. So appender gives you control. Appender, it gives you control where your log statements should be printed. Appender is going to define that. Okay. For example, in this both configuration, we are saying, okay, all the root level stuff means all the logs, whichever is applicable here. It should go in console as well as file. Okay, similarly, let's say we don't want to use this, so let's remove this. It was only for experimenting. Similarly, we are saying all the application logs of this one, com.hulkhirtech.payments, should go also in console as well as file. Nothing but now there is a control here. Okay, statements are being printed, that is okay. But where these statements should go? So we are defining that it should go to console, it should go to file also. Okay, what is this console and file? Nothing but in the same XML file, we have defined other appender tags. Appender tag 1, appender tag 2. Append, the name itself says append. You need to keep adding to it, append. Okay. So we created, just see, appender name equal to console. So we created another tag with the name as console, and we are referring it here. That's what it is. Appender reference. Okay, what reference? Or a console reference. What is console? It is another tag defined here, appender tag with the name console. So we are saying when you try to print the root logs or when you try to print application level logs, we want that this log statement should be printed to this appender. Means the logging configuration is going to check in the same XML, is there another appender tag with this name available? And yes, it is going to find, yeah, there is another tag available with this name. Means when you are trying to print this statement, it will print as per whatever configuration is available here. And just observe, this is set up to be console appender. So this class they are using, it's logback. So internally, yes, this external configuration is a logback configuration. If you want to use a log4j2, SLF4J with log4j2, here you will put log4j2 related configurations. So this XML will change. That is where the name of this XML is logback-string. So this configuration is logback specific configuration. Log4j might have a different variation. So Java code you will not change, but if you want to change to some other logging framework, you need to work with different XML files. This is logback, and that is where you can see this package they have mentioned logback.core.console appender. So because of this Java class, it is going to print it on console. Okay, what is a console? This is a console, right? So because of console appender, it prints on the console. Likewise, we are also saying file appender. What is going to happen? The configuration will check, is there an appender tag where the name is file? So yes, there is an appender tag with the name as file. So we need to apply this configuration also. So you are guiding the logging framework. Okay, all the statements which abide here, it should go to console also, it should go to file also. Means it will take this configuration, console appender, and it will go for this rolling file appender configuration also. Rolling file concept also will be applicable. Okay, one by one we will understand both. First, let's go to the console related. After that, we will go to the file related configuration. Okay, so but let's draw some conclusions here before we move forward. Appender, where your log statement should be printed. Okay, primarily we can write logs in two places. One is console, second one is file. Using this tag appender, we can define our console or file logging settings. Okay, and use appender ref to point to that. Okay, fine. So let's just take this final conclusion. What does this mean? What does this mean? Okay, in the XML, it will look for appender tag, it will look for appender tag with name like this. Okay. So for example, in our case, it will look something like this. Okay. And the rest of the stuff will come here. Next, whatever values are defined in appender will take effect. Whatever values are defined in appender will take effect. Okay, very good. Let's now explore. Firstly, we will focus on console appender. Okay. Firstly, we will focus on console appender. Let's go. Okay. So what have we done for console appending? We are simply putting pattern, nothing but how this statement should be printed. That kind of pattern configuration we have made it available. How the statement should be printed. Okay. Now let's say, for example, I write one word in this pattern. Let's say hello. Let's observe. Observe. Hello world is coming or not? So in this pattern, whatever we are writing, the Spring Boot system is reading this logback configuration, and accordingly in the console setting, it has applied that kind of a pattern. So when we are writing just something like hello, it took it in the pattern. Okay. Now there are a lot of other configurations. They're all predefined. Means now there is all this syntax. These are called as conversion words. Conversion words. Okay, what are conversion words? Something like this. Percentage level is a conversion word. Means these are predefined. So based upon what you're using, let's say this represents date and time, because you are giving date and time, how it should be printed. Okay, let's just observe. Let's just observe. Initially, when we put this level, forget about this -5. Let's remove the -5 here. Observe. You remove the -5. What is happening? The space is gone. Just observe. Debug is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Info is only 4. So when you are reading, kind of alignment is gone here and there, right? One space is more. So we just want proper alignment so that readability is more. Okay. For that reason, generally people will say -5, nothing but 5 characters they want to reserve. So just observe the difference. Earlier it is looking like this. One space is more here. Okay. Debug is a 5 character. Info is a 4 character. So a bit misaligned it's looking. Right? It is gone. So you want to do alignment. So you can reserve it 5 characters. So then it becomes what? Just observe. Just observe. For everything, it is now taking 5 characters. It added one space here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this percentage level basically prints what is the level. So whenever you are writing a statement, it prints the level, right? Whether you used info method, debug method, whatever method. So it keeps printing that level. So info, debug, whatever it is. Plus alignment is also in the same line. So these are conversion words. These are predefined. So percentage level. Percentage D is for this purpose, date and time. So observe. First the level is there. After that, okay, let's do a quick test. Okay, let's do a quick test. And observe. First level is coming. Then hello word. We added it only for testing hello. We will remove it in some time. Next, the current date and time we can represent using like this conversion word. Internally, the framework reads, okay, why, then the month, then the day. So 3rd October 2025. And what is the time? Hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. We defined that kind of pattern. Accordingly, it has taken that effect. Hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. Try to experiment with these kind of patterns using AI. Fine. Next, in angle brackets, we are saying thread. Which thread is basically processing this request? So the thread is available here. HTTP NIO, and then we specified about the thread. Okay, next. This is a different syntax now. We never saw a dollar kind of symbol so far. Okay, percentage and all we are able to understand. These are conversion words. What is this dollar sign? Nothing but in this configuration itself, you can put something like this, guys. Just see. You can define other tags here. Let's say Spring property means you want to read some values from other property file. You can use Spring property tag. And you're reading, okay, this kind of parameter. Just observe. Spring.application name. It is defined in application.properties. Application.properties. Inside this name is defined Spring application name. The name is coming payment processing service. So you want to read this value. Source is from the property file. You want to read that value. Spring property. From the Spring property, you want to read the value with the name Spring application, spring.application.name, and you assign it to this variable Spring app name. And this Spring app name you're reading here using dollar symbol. So what are we learning here? There are conversion words. These are predefined by the logging framework. So accordingly, it takes efforts. %d, %thread. Oh, you can read more values. You can define them. If you want to read it from Spring system, you define it in a Spring property. And then using this syntax, you can read the value. And how do you get the value part here is with this syntax, dollar curly braces. That's what is the next thing which is happening here. Inside curly braces, this name is coming. It is basically coming from application.properties. Everything is logical, right? It's there. That's where it is being printed. After that, what did we see? Okay, %logger. Nothing but this statement was printed using which logger? So in payment controller, we have written, just observe payment controller. We wrote this statement, trace method is invoked. Trace method is invoked. Using the log, and this log object is created inside payment controller. So SLF4J has created a org.slf4j.logger object inside payment controller. And that is where we are using for the statement. So we can get it here. Next, after that, so we have specified logger. So logger is printed. After that, space hyphen space, which is this space hyphen space. Then comes percentage message. Percentage message is nothing but in the payment controller, what message has the user written? So our message is going here, trace method invoked. After that, we have written another message, debug method invoked. So whatever is the message which we are writing, it is printed because of this configuration, percentage message. If you don't write message, our messages are not going to be printed. Are you getting it? So these configurations are very interesting. You miss out something, our log messages will not stop printing, right? That is really interesting. Okay. Now, what is this /n in the end? It is a new line character. Like, go to the next line after that. If you don't write it, it will maybe append it and do other drama. So we are saying new line, new line, new line. Okay. These kind of conversion words, there are other conversion words also. Already in the document, I have applied that. Anybody can learn these things, right? I just went to ChatGPT and said, give me the conversion words, give it in a tabular format with examples and meaning. ChatGPT gave me some of the conversion words. You can use these other things also. Okay? You can use these other things also. %5. You will do 5 character. Next, logger. fully qualified name will be visible. Let's say if you do logger of 36, let's try to do logger of 36. What exactly it does? Logger of 36. Just observe. Earlier, full class name was coming. All the packages were org.springframework. Now, the more focus is on the name of the class. The package structure is just put it into one character. So just to reduce the length of the entire log statement, we can do it in this manner. Log 36. So again, very commonly we will use something like this configuration. Okay, next. Message. The actual message will come with %msg. New line will come like this. Okay, you are interested. Okay, in what method was this logged? So you just have to use %M. Now you can put it, let's say, in this Spring application, in this logger, %M I am writing. Let's check it out. Okay, just observe. This is the log method. This is the log method. Your Tomcat server start is the log method. Here, this is the log method. If we do some testing, observe. This create transaction is a log method. Payment controller. Create transaction is the log method. Okay, observe here. How many characters these are? How many characters these are? Roughly around 34. 34 characters. 34 length. Okay, that is what is this configuration. XML configuration. For logger, we said 36. Nothing but wherever possible, it used the full name. Wherever not possible, it just summarized it into short. So it tried that maximum length of the logger should be 36. If it is less than that, it is okay. But if it is more than that, it is doing some cutting here. Okay, it is doing some kind of cutting here. For example, here, just observe this one. It just used o.s.b.d.a. and name of the class. Wherever scope was there, it explained one more package in detail. Here it explained one more package in detail. Here, our class name itself is very long. So it just summarized this in very short. So total length it is trying to cap to 36. And now we are saying method after that. So yes, method is coming after that. Let's say, does it take this kind of a syntax? Just because it is method, so putting it at least like this makes it okay. No, it doesn't take that kind of syntax. Okay, so it is not taking this kind of a syntax. Let's try to put a space. Again, not sure whether it will work. Log starting, and no, it did not properly write it. Okay, it is just putting everything together. So this kind of brace did not work out. Okay, so we cannot write it like this. So we need to understand the syntax part here properly. Otherwise, it could get into some issues. So we are not able to get these kind of brackets written there. So anyways, not a problem. So we will get, okay, this is coming, the name of the methods. Now, if you want to try another thing, let's say, or let's try to work with ChatGPT and see if it is possible. Okay, if it is possible, not sure. So we can go to ChatGPT and say we have below logback pattern. Okay, we are using %m for method. However, we wanted syntax in log to print method name and then parenthesis followed by parenthesis. How to change? Let's see what it gives. It's a conversion word. It will just print the method name without this one. There is no built-in way to automatically append the parenthesis, but you can simply add this to the right hand side. Okay, we tried this, but it is not working. So we tried this only, right? This is not working. So we have to do some playing around with this. Let's try to check once more. We will put and we will give the error. Okay, so on using this, we got below error. Okay, I think this is good enough. Let's see what this guy says. That's where it tried to treat blah blah blah. Put parenthesis in quotes. Okay, won't work directly, but you can add parenthesis literally like this. Is invalid, but this works. Okay, and then it is not, since it's just putting everything together itself. So it's okay. Can be rewritten. Okay, something like this. So first, I think this is what LLM is going through some kind of thought process, and then it found the current pattern. It can be fixed using something like this. Okay, so let's try this thing out. It's putting a slash to escape before that. Let's go here. Okay, let's check it out. What happened this time? Perfect. It's not failing. Yeah, it's coming like this. Okay, so start. Log started on event. So at least this gives a feeling, oh, these are some methods which are being invoked for doing the printing. So now the point is, you can play around with these kind of configurations, and then accordingly you can use class, file, line, where it is written, all these kind of things you can play around. Okay, fine. So we understood this part. Okay, log patterns are available. Okay, very good. Now, moving to the next topic, we are doing file logging also. So let's understand file logging. Okay, means other than writing to the console, we are saying write to the file also. Okay, so first we understood the file pattern. Now we are saying write to a file also. Let's look at the file configuration. This is the file configuration. Means it has to be returned to some file. Okay, automatic question, which file? That name or file information is present here. Which file you want to log, okay, is available here. Okay, what is the syntax? @logging.path @. Okay, observe. When we understood profiling concept, there also we used @. If you remember profiling, this value is coming from pom.xml. Okay, so if this @ is also coming from pom.xml, okay, directly we can look for this value from pom.xml. That is the logging path. So let's go there. Pom.xml processing service. Is there something like this defined here? Yes, logging.path is configured here. So in profiles, local profile is activated when we are running it local machine. As part of that, they have defined two properties. One is Spring Profile Active, which we use Spring Profile Active. We use in application.property here. And the second one is logging.path. So this is the place where the log files are supposed to be. For this microservice, payment processing service, logs are going to be generated where? Okay, this is going to be the path of that. We have defined that in our form.xml. And now you can come back to the configuration here. Under that path, you create a file name like this. Okay, what is that? We already know what this parameter comes. This is nothing but this one, the Spring application name of that microservice. So under this parameter, this is the Spring application name. And then .log, the log files will be created .log pattern. So we are telling configuration, okay, that, okay, we need to write these logs even to this kind of file, which is located on this place, and under that it is available here. Okay, so let's try to check whether these log files are available first of all here. Okay, yes, some log files are there. So from the time we have added these changes, some log files are being created here. Okay, now you have to work with these log files the way you work it in AWS environment. Tail command, vi command, that's how you have to practice it. Work with these log files like Linux system. So tail command, grep command, vi editor, you have to use it like this only, because on the machines it will be available like that itself to you. Okay, so for this, Mobaxterm comes in picture again. So for checking the log files, black screen, Mobaxterm, Linux based commands, those things will come into effect. Okay, let's go to this place where the log files are there. Start a local terminal, cd, let's go. Here we are, ll, fine, log files are there. Okay, let's do this simple thing, tail -f, payment processing.log. Just observe the file name is also clear. Application name .log. Always people will use this. Okay, let's say we have tailed the log file. Now let's do some testing. Okay, just observe behind the screen, logs are being written to the file also. That is what is appending. Console appender, file appender. So when we do the testing, the changes are going here also, and the changes are going here also. Okay, the changes are going in both the places. Now observe, in this file also there is something called as pattern. How do you want to print it? So while doing the testing, in console we have started using hello pattern, but in the file we have not used that hello pattern. So automatically in the file you don't see that hello. So separate pattern is configured for console, separate pattern is configured for file. So ideally you will use the same only, because we were doing some testing. That is where we modified it like this. But otherwise, same pattern you will use in both the places. Please be aware of it. Don't try to do here different, there different. It will get into more problems. We need to use similar patterns. Please be aware at both the places. But yes, in the file tag, we defined it at which place log should be written. And this is the file tag. And we are saying both the root level should go there as well as this should go there. Now let's say you want to write it into a different file. You will just copy paste this appender tag and just say file-error, and all the error logs you will put in there. Or you want something like HTTP service engine related, so that you can put it separately. So by this way you can configure this tag n number of times, and just then in appender do which package you want to write to which file. That level of control and flexibility is available. N number of files you can create, and n number of packages you can guide where which one should go. Okay, fine. Next, moving on. Okay, so a lot of things we are concluding, but the main thing at least we should understand here that, okay, the log statements will be written on files also. This is very important. Console is supposed to be temporary. Okay, console logging is considered only temporary. means people can delete console logs. When the application is closed, console logs can go away. Even though, let's say, when we ran this command, java space -jar, okay, let's say my file.jar, and you said write it to my log file.log. People will not try to safeguard this log file. We did write no hub like this, and we said whatever is running by this command output, it should be printed in this. This is how we ran the no hub command. Remember, recollect it. People will not try to protect this file. They might just delete it. They might erase it. They will say this is not the right way. This is only console logging, and it is going to be temporary. So this myfile.log will be considered as console. It can be deleted. It can go away. Okay, but this people will not delete. This people will take care of very seriously. It needs to be maintained for even next 5 years, 10 years, depending upon your project agreements, okay, what your business and the client says. So please be aware, this is only console logging, and you don't keep this for a long time. It is temporary in nature. Every restart, you might just delete it also, but these log files have to be maintained properly. So that is where there is a proper defined path for that. And in your project, you will agree where all the logs should be generated, and then path will be defined, name of the file will be defined. Generally, whatever is your Spring application name, .log itself will be the name of the file. Okay, so we understood this. Next, what did we understand more? It file logging also has pattern, the way console logging, like console logging, even file logging is also having pattern. So that is available here. Please be aware. Okay, file logging is also having a pattern here. Okay, fine. Now there is one more concept you need to understand. The name says rolling file appender. This is important to understand, so focus is required, and it is a bit tricky also, so please focus here. Okay, rolling file appender. What does this mean, rolling file appender? Okay, and just observe, rolling policy, there is one tag called as rolling policy. It is saying time-based rolling policy. Nothing but rolling means what is going to happen is, let's imagine currently there is this file created. Currently there is this file created, but there are some other files also. Okay, what exactly is happening? Currently this file is created. And now whatever we do the testing, it is going to be printed here. Print, 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 all the log statements. We need to understand one thing. If you keep writing all the logs to the same file, the file size will become very huge. And you know that if there are very big files, you're opening, let's say, even in Notepad++ or any other editor, the software will just crash. Notepad will hang, Notepad++ might hang. So if one file itself is having too many information and it is GB of data, even though you try to open it in any tools, you will not be able to open it. Software will be crashing. So we need to make sure you don't keep writing all the logs to the same file, so the file size becomes less. So individually managing it should happen. Okay, how do you do this? For that we are using time-based, so rolling policy, time-based rolling. Okay, what does it mean? We are saying, just see, depending upon this pattern, we are saying, okay, after every 1 hour, this -HH means after every 1 hour, you create a new file with this kind of naming. So understand this part. What is going to happen? Step by step things will be happening. Okay, initially first file is created. So initially first file is created. There is no backup, let's assume. First file is created. All logs are going here. Okay, now we have set up a time-based rolling policy. Time here is saying in our configuration, it is saying hourly. Time-based rolling policy means hourly, means every 1 hour. What is going to happen? As soon as 1 hour passes, okay, we are asking, create a new file. That is nothing but roll the file. Okay. For example, roll this file means whatever is the content into this. Something like this. Maybe you can run a move command. I don't know how it internally does. I'm just trying to explain. Okay, roll the file. Maybe just copy this file and write that content. Content of this file will be written into a new file. Content written into new file. And what should be that new file? They have defined. Okay, that new file should also be created in the same path, and the naming should be something like this. The Spring application name dot log and dot you define what date and then R that file represents data of. Okay. For example, let's say at 10 a.m. somewhere this first file was created. Okay. And you are putting all the log statements there. As soon as this rolling is going to happen. Okay. So it will say all the logs from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Okay. You will put it into this file name. What is that file name? This one. You will put it into this place. Just observe. Log path means same path. Same path. Okay. Let me do it like this. Control Z. Control Z. Put a roll into this. Means it is going to be printed in this path. Okay. And under that, that new file name is going to be again Spring application logs, which is nothing but this is the Spring application name. Dot log. And then we say, okay, date representation. So the year, which is going to be 2025, the month, which is going to be, let's say, whatever, October, and then day to day is 03, and then you will put, okay, at 11 a.m. you have rolled. So all the logs of this 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. is here. So you will be putting it underscore 11. And then this goes away. So you are saying all the statements which were available in this file should be now written into this file, and this file should become empty. And you will reset this file. Reset this file. It will become empty. Becomes empty to capture new logs. That is file rolling. You take that file, you copy all the content into a different file with a proper naming, and then you reset this file so the new statements can come to this place. And because of that reason, just observe, today we started getting these kind of log statements. While we are doing the testing, okay, it created one logger with 10. Okay, it created one with 11. Now it's 12:30, 12:32. If we start doing more, just see all the testing that we are doing, it is writing things here. Payment processing service. Everything is under payment processing service. As soon as the next 30 minutes happen, automatically there will be a new file with the name like this. There will be a new file with the name, okay, like this 12. And all the changes of this file will be available there, and this will become new. This concept is called as rolling concept. Roll means create a new file. So code from logs from this will be copied here. This file will reset. By this way, we ensure that per file, we are not saving big amount of data. So your file is still accessible. You are narrowing down the size of the file by this approach. Okay. So guys, that concept is rolling file concept. In fact, now we are doing time-based rolling. There is another concept called as size-based rolling. Size-based means you can define, okay, if X MB of data happens or KB of data happens, then create new file. So people sometimes can configure size-based also, depending upon XKB. Once you have reached that, create a new file. So automatically you are limiting how much size every file can happen, or you can do time-based logging also, depending upon the situation. Let's say you are running a very big scale project where per 30 minutes, lot of traffic will happen. Global scale projects, lot of traffic is going to happen. You cannot do time-based logging because within 1 hour itself, everybody from the globe is doing it. Within 1 hour, your file size will be many GBs because of the global scale. In such case, you have to do size-based logging. But if your application is not that widely used, in 1 hour, you are still getting a decent size logs. So time-based approach also makes sense. So depending upon your project, some logging approach is going to be applied. Guys, are we clear with this? Are we clear with this? We need to write things to logs, but logs we have to control. You cannot keep dumping everything together. Okay, guys, are we clear with this? One of the members is saying yes. What about the rest? Guys, understanding logging. Nice, very good, very good. Thanks for confirmations. Console-based logging, file-based logging. Okay, still be there. There are some more interesting concepts we have to discuss here. Okay, interesting concepts, guys. Please put some attention. Okay, now how exactly end-to-end solution will happen? So we got to this point. File rolling is going to happen. But just imagine you are running this in EC2 machine and you are keeping on rolling. So this becomes file 1, file 2, file 3. How many times you will roll this? Because in the end, you're occupying the hard disk only, right? So even though one file is readable, but if you keep everything here itself, a point will come where your hard disk will become 100% full. And if your hard disk is 100%, you cannot write any new statement. Basically, your project is going to hang. 100% hard disk if happens, your IOs will block, everything will stop basically. So we need to understand, you cannot keep infinitely all the files in this place. Not possible. So generally, here also some prevention will be there. If people will put this additional configuration, let's say max history, nothing but maximum 20, the past 20 hours of file should be available here. That is max history. So what is max history? You will maintain even that. The hard disk doesn't get full. Max history means max 20 hours of files will be kept on the machine. That's how max history will happen. Okay, now let me tell you how the setup will be there in the production system. It's not going to be on hourly basis rolling for many of the projects. It will be daily basis rolling. Okay, please understand, for many projects, production system will roll logs on daily basis. How do you do daily basis logging? Okay, technically it's very simple. You just need to rename this. Just change the file name. For example, if I want to do some experiments, let's say, okay, we say hours. Just by changing this pattern, the rolling frequency is going to be decided. Okay, for example, if I just change hours hyphen minute hyphen SS for seconds, I'm just changing the pattern here for experimenting. Let's observe. Okay, LL, just see. Hours, minutes, seconds, every second file got created. Now let's say I am doing some testing. Only when logs are written, then the file is going to be created, right? So let's say we are doing some testing. We are calling this, we are doing some testing. So that means behind the screen, log files are written and rolling is also happening because we enabled it at second level. Just imagine every second we are saying, write a new file, write a new file. Let's go here. Observe, so many number of files are created and you still keep doing some testing. You keep doing some testing. What you will realize is, if you continue to keep doing this, it will keep adding many files. Every second rolling is going to happen. Every second rolling is going to happen. Okay, now let's do an LL. Just observe, it keeps adding new and new file. Okay, but how many such files you want to keep with you, that depends upon this configuration. So what does this configuration mean? It means maximum past 20 seconds of file. So it's not 20 number of files, it is 20 seconds of file. If you allow it at minute level, it will mean past 20 minutes of file. If you allow it at hour level, it will mean past 20 hours of file. If you allow it at day level, it will mean past 20 days of file. It's not number of files, it is how much of this component you are talking about. Please be aware of. So what do we realize here? By changing the pattern like this, okay, rolling configuration, time-based rolling we are understanding, time-based rolling, time-based rolling. Okay, when you do like this, every second file got rolled. That's what we kept seeing here. Every second, we just gave the name like this. For example, I'll just take this kind of an example. Just observe, every second the file got rolled and new file will be kept, and it is happening. So if you change the pattern of file name, accordingly the rolling time is decided. Okay, so for example, we said in the projects they will set up daily rolling, not hourly also. So your configuration is going to be something like this. For daily rolling, you will be setting up something like, just remove this, don't give all this. If you give HH means hourly, you just have to give like this. So in the projects, they will just set it up on a daily rolling manner. It will just be something like this. Okay, so please be aware of that. So there is one tricky thing here to understand. Okay, kind of just observe what is happening. I will now do one test. Go to Postman, doing one test. Go back to this space, do an LL. Observe, all the seconds related file got deleted. Now, this is where now you have to be serious when you are configuring logging. You need to really understand this trick. When you have done the max history, now you can strongly understand. When you have done the max history, it means maintain only maximum 20 seconds of log file. So just imagine when you were doing testing, at this time one log file was created. At this time one log file is created. After that, we were doing some explanation and we have spent more than 20 seconds. Automatically, what has happened? Maybe we might have explained for 1 minute. After that, when you created, a new file came and it tried to maintain only past 20 seconds of files. Since no file was generated in the 20 seconds, it deleted all the previous ones. So you need to be really careful with regards to using this configuration. Otherwise, your log file can end up being deleted. It does not mean maintain past 20 files. It means maintain past 20 seconds of file. If you use after that, it wipes up the previous one. For juniors, this is tricky to understand. So for example, so max history needs to be dealt very properly. So please be aware. Max history of 20. It means, okay, maintain only past 20 X of files. It's not 20 number of files. It's not 20 number of files. It means 20 X of files. What is X here? Okay. For example, if you define the ruling, generally juniors don't get this point and they cause damage into the projects. But yeah, if you use the pattern like this, if you use the pattern, ruling pattern like this, it means, and then you say max history 20. Let's say max history is 20 all throughout, and your ruling pattern is like this. It will mean maintain past 20 seconds of files, rest everything you can delete. Okay, next, when you maintain it like this, it means maintain past 20 minutes. Maintain past 20 minutes. Rest everything, delete. Rest everything of the same pattern, go ahead, delete it. Okay, next, if you use it like this, just by changing the pattern, maintain past 20 hours of file, rest everything will be deleted. Next, if you use it something like this, maintain past 20 days, rest everything will be deleted. That is how these configurations work. And like we said, in prod, we set up at daily level. So generally, when you do it at a daily level and everyday testing is happening, one file per day will be there. So people feel that, oh, maybe past 20 files it is maintaining. No, it's not 20 files. It is 20 days ka files. If 0 file is generated in 20 days and you are generating at 21st day, basically no file will be there. Okay. So please be aware of that. The second example gave us that kind of clarity. Okay, fine. So now comes the last part of today. Last part of today. How end-to-end production configuration is going to be. Okay. So basic technical things will be like this only. But how end-to-end production system will be set up with logging? Let's try to spend some time in doing that. We maintain, there are a lot of things about logging. Okay. One, logs should be maintained for long time. It can be up to 10 years also, long time. Second, on the EC2 machine, logs cannot be kept for long because it is going to occupy 100% hard disk. So you cannot keep it there. So it needs to be somewhere else. Okay, third problem, try to understand. We are using microservices. Services. Let's imagine you have a flow, processing services trying to talk to Stripe provider. So one log will be created here, processing.log. Another log will be created for Stripe provider.log. When you are doing the testing, you need to go to this log also for this testing. For the other testing, you need to go to second log. Nothing but when we are using microservice, we need to investigate in multiple log files when trying to find the solution, what went wrong. So that is another challenge. Okay. So what are the questions that we need to solve? How do you keep logs for long term, 10 years and so? How do you keep logs for long term? Second, we need to solve. We cannot, okay, where do you keep? Where do you keep these logs for long term? Because it cannot be there on the machine. So where do you keep it? Third thing, okay, across microservice, is there easy way to have logs so that you don't have to log in? Let's say 5 services are there. You don't want to go to 5 log files to check. Can it all be centralized? Yes, there are solutions available for this. Okay, what are the solutions? Very interesting solutions available for this. Okay, solution number one. We need an end-to-end ELK stack. Elasticsearch. This is one of the solution in the market. Some alternates are also available. Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. This kind of a system will be utilized in the production. ELK. Okay, ELK. Elasticsearch, Kibana, Logstash. This is also called as Elastic Stack together. So in the projects, people will use this Elastic Stack. Where it is going to be utilized, we will discuss. Especially for microservice, this is very essential to put in place. Okay. Again, seniors will do the setup. What you do is just write the logging. Maybe DevOps team member or senior will do this ELK kind of setup, and the project will take care of it. So ELK stack is required. Why? Where it is applied, we will understand. Okay. The basic aim is going to be something like this. Let's say you have two systems. Processing service is running on one EC2 machine. Next, Stripe provider is running on another EC2 machine. Now, third problem is logs will come here also, logs will come here also. People have to log in here. A lot of debugging time will be there. What you will do is you will move all these logs in one central place and then access those logs using Kibana tool. So basically, all the logs across all the machines will be arranged in one single place, and developer can just logging into Kibana and check the logs here. So what is happening? Even if you have 50 microservices, all the logs from all these places will be moved here, and then using Kibana tool, we can check it. Okay. So where is this logs stored? We store it in, okay. So for moving the logs, basically Logstash and Logsearch, they just say, okay, let's just go to ChatGPT. In one line, explain purpose of each of this one. Okay. Yeah. This is the flow. From your EC2 machine, first of all, Logstash is going to collect the data, do some formatting on that, and ship the data into Elasticsearch. The flow is going to be something like this. From your EC2 machine, Logstash is going to be running on your EC2 machine. Logstash is going to run on the EC2 machine. It is going to take the log files which is generated, parse it, maybe some JSON format kind of thing will happen. We are writing everything line by line. It will be converted into JSON format. Converted to JSON format. Log statements converted to JSON format. This is one person will do that. As juniors, you just log the values. That's it. Your work is done. Somebody else will come in picture. They will set up Logstash on your EC2 machine, which will be reading your log files, doing some parsing. Parsing nothing but kind of preparing JSONs or stuff like that. Okay, maybe masking can also be applied here. Some phone numbers should not be actually shipped. These kind of work can happen. And then shipped into Elasticsearch. Nothing but it's a separate software. Nothing but where the data is going to be maintained, Elasticsearch. So from this place, it is going to go. From this place also, Logstash is going to work. And data is going to be arranged in all this single central place across every place. You can imagine if multiple microservice instances are running. Okay, changes from all that, logs from all that instances will also be available here. So kind of in central place, all the logs are moving. Elasticsearch is that place. Okay, let's understand that. Elasticsearch, it is a search and analytics engine to store and query logs and data efficiently. Nothing but it is a kind of a storage. All the logs will be stored in this Elasticsearch. You can assume kind of a database, but database of logs. So first data will be collected, logs will be collected. It will be saved into Elasticsearch, and then Kibana is going to do this. Okay, visualization dashboard to explore, analyze the data which is stored in Elasticsearch. Kind of UI you can just imagine. The way you go to DB viewer. Okay, so it is going to connect to the database, and then you can write queries and see some stuff there. Kibana is going to provide a UI console for that. For example, if you just go to Kibana log images, okay, let's just go to some images. We will be able to see, just observe. This is how Kibana logs will look like. Okay, this is how Kibana console is going to look like. Okay, it is, let's open it in a new tab. Just observe, this is a kind of Kibana dashboard. The full stack is like Elastic. Last 15 minutes, what logs happened across multiple microservices. All those logs will be available here. So this is nothing but a kind of Kibana dashboard. So you don't have to always go into these kind of tools and work with Linux-based commands. When you are working with microservices and you have many microservices, people might ask you, hey, logging into Kibana means this kind of a console will be there. Your user account will be there. You have to just log in into that and then search last 15 minutes of data. You can write your queries here. KQL, the way SQL query is there, right? This is KQL. I think it is Kibana query language. What is KQL? Kibana query language. The way SQL is structured query language, select star from, like that Kibana query language is there. Okay, some syntax will be coming from that query language also, but just be aware, this kind of querying mechanism is going to happen. So you can just imagine, this is kind of a DB storage where all the logs will be maintained. Kibana is like a MySQL workbench or DB viewer, but it is a web-based area. You can log in from there and then you can get started. Okay, and then now you can write KQL, Kibana query language based queries. You can check on the syntax again. ChatGPT can help you for that, and then you will be able to find. The main important part is the changes from all the microservices are in one single place. Searching is at one place. Life of developer is simple. So this is one solution which is going to be required. So when you are using multiple microservices, you want to investigate. So how do you do that? Okay, we will be using ELK Stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana. This kind of stack will be there. So you will have to work with it. Okay, now comes the second point. So this is fine. If you want to draw a better diagram here, we can understand. When we are running this processing service in EC2 machine, the logs are going to be moved into this Elasticsearch. From there further, using Kibana tool, we will be able to see these logs. So from your machine, the logs have to go here. For that purpose, we will be using something called as Logstash. So ELK works together as a log monitoring kind of system. So this is one setup which will be done on your production. Okay, what is the second setup? Second setup will be logs should be maintained for a long time. What they will do in AWS, one of the ways AWS S3 buckets. Here you can store data for a long time. AWS S3 buckets. Here you can store data for a long time. Second approach is from this place, your data is going to go, log file, log data is going to go to this place also. Okay. Now, how exactly it happens? Here also some set of softwares are available. Okay, for example, I've put in here the softwares which are commonly used for many of the projects. Is going to be something like this. First, on the EC2 machine, we will use some software called as FluentBit. We will be using some software called as FluentBit or FileBit. So we will use this kind of a software. What is the purpose of this software? This software is going to read your log files, and further it is going to give it one to the Logstash. Okay, so it will read your log file, it will give one to the log stash. And second, this guy is going to give the file to this other place called as Kinesis Firehose. This is a separate software. It will be giving it to Kinesis Firehose. So the log file will be taken, maybe converted into logs, JSON files, and it will be shipped to Logstash and also shipped to Kinesis Firehose. It's a different software. Now, real time, whenever now your EC2 machine processing service is running, this happens real time. Processing service is running. Whenever your code is running and you are logging this new information, as soon as this statement is printed here, this statement is going to be read by FluentBit or FileBit, and it is going to be shipped to Logstash as well as shipped to Kinesis Firehose. It's a separate software. Now, it will be maintained. Logstash say it goes in ELK Stash, where Kibana-based people will log in and they will view this. Other thing is, here it is going to be held for some period of time. Some consolidation is going to happen. It will take line by line, make it available here. Now you can do a lot of settings in this Kinesis Firehose where you will configure that every X amount of time or X amount of size, you then prepare a file of all the logs which came. You prepare a file, Second thing is you zip the file, kind of zip file, and then move the zip file into S3 bucket. Put to S3. S3 is where we will store the data for a long time. So what is the advantage here? Your log file which is generated, we are not keeping it on the EC2 machine for a long time. Not required. Just imagine, guys, just imagine. We spoke about auto scaling. Auto scale, so which is a scale up or a scale down operation. Remember, microservice discussion, scale up or scale down. What is scale up? When traffic is more number of machines should be created. What is scale down? When traffic is less, these machines should be deleted. Now you can imagine, if we are writing the log files on the machine itself, when the scale down operation happens, it will just be deleted. So we cannot keep the logs here for a long time. So the logs, as soon as it is generated, it is going to be moved into two different places away from your EC2 machine. So what is going to be the configuration on your EC2 machine for logs? Nothing but what will you really set up in this place is going to be a daily logging. You will just set up your log configuration. It is going to be a daily rolling and maintain last 7 days of data. That's it. You will only enable this kind of configuration. For many projects, this is how people do. Daily rolling and maintain only 7 days of data on the EC2 machine. Okay, just like that. But otherwise, people can say, let's make it less than this also. But this is kind of a safety. If something goes wrong while moving the data into S3, or something goes wrong in loading it into Elasticsearch and Kibana, if there are problems, then at least you have last 7 days of data. You can get it from there and then do these things properly. So it acts like a backup mechanism in case something goes wrong into these processes. But otherwise, it is not really required. So we will set up the machine something like this. Daily rolling and maintain only 7 days of data. But important thing is, as and when the new logs are there, we will do the setup in this manner using FluentBit or FileBit. Read it, give it to Logstash, give it to Kinesis Firehose, and in this Kinesis Firehose, it keeps adding line by line till some configured value. Once you reach that value, you can further zip it and then ship it into S3 bucket. Other flow is going to be, as and when that line by line is being read in Logstash, it will be line by line inserted into Elasticsearch. So it becomes a database of all the logs, and then using Kibana tool, you will go there and you can monitor it. Now, all this setup is again part of a DevOps skill set, those people are supposed to know about how to do this setup, how to work with Kinesis firehose, how to do this ELK kind of setting. But as soon as you gain around 4 years of experience, 5 years of experience, people will start expecting that you should also know about the AWS and these kind of services, how to do the setup, how to do the testing. So please be aware, as junior, you start focusing on application development, but as you grow more, you have to expand your horizon into even full stack application development plus cloud related services, and now even towards AI transformation as well. Expectations will change as you grow in the industry. You cannot be just a backend developer forever. No, if you don't upgrade, you will become outdated and you will face consequences. Okay? So guys, this is the last topic, how end-to-end flow is going to happen. Okay? Guys, are we clear with this? Are we clear with this? Team, are we clear? Just the names of the software, just be aware of it. During interview time, explain. Important thing, why do you not keep it on EC2? Scale down, everything will be gone. So it has to be moved real time. So real time, the data goes at different places. Explain them with this diagram, this flow, how it all works. And if they say, do you know how to do the setup? You just say, no, I'm not aware of that. Some seniors are taking care of all this work, but I know that this is how the setup basically works, right? Fine, fine, fine. Okay, there is one more topic. From development perspective, you have to understand. Okay, I will just explain it to you. Maybe you can explore about it by yourself. It's there in this documentation also. Just imagine. It is something which you will be required even as a junior. So I would like to give it to you. And in interview, they might ask this question. So fine, you're using microservice. In your microservice system, validation is working, processing is working, Stripe provider is working. Okay. And now let's say you're saying log files are generated here. Log files are generated here. Log files are generated here. And now you are saying you will move everything into Elasticsearch at one central place and you will search. Now, the question to you is, how will you uniquely identify this request? Okay. Somewhere we can say, okay, using transaction reference is being generated here. But then it comes like, but in validation service, transaction reference is not generated, right? So then what about the logs of the validation service? Then you will say, oh, when validation we are looking, we will look at merchant transaction reference. And when we go here, we will look at transaction reference. And then from logs, we will try to manage. Here we might look at provider reference. But nothing but the question is there an easy way, okay, some unique ID which tracks all the logs across the three systems? So in microservice, this becomes a need. It's not optional. Yes, that is where there are some concepts like span ID and trace ID. Span ID and trace ID. These are unique IDs created at the beginning. Whenever the HTTP request comes to the first microservice, some trace ID and span ID is created. Okay, generally, let me go here. Trace ID and span ID. This trace ID is unique for the entire request. So span ID is going to be service specific. Just note this. Trace ID is going to be common for this request. Let's say trace ID is 123. Span ID is X. Next, when your one microservice is making the call to another microservice, this trace ID is going to be passed to that other microservice also. This trace ID is going to be passed to other microservice also. 1, 2, 3. It will generate its own span ID. It could be Y. Span ID is service specific. Y. And then trace ID is same thing which will be passed. Okay. And then this will further go. And when you are calling Stripe provider, you will again get the same trace ID 123, and then span ID is going to be Z. So what will happen? Using this trace ID and span ID concept, span ID, trace ID, using this concept, you can search in Kibana by just based upon trace ID. Even though, forget if you don't have Kibana also, you want to link with these logs. After running this validation, what are the remaining logs here? You can take the trace ID from the log file here, then go here, check the log files. So this trace ID and span ID really works nicely. Okay, how do you implement this trace ID and span ID? Okay, so trace ID and span ID. How do you do this? This concept is nothing but distributed logging concept. When you are logging across a distributed system, distributed logging concept. So how do you use this trace and ID and span ID? Till Spring Boot 2.x, they provided it with sleuth for distributed logging. However, from Spring Boot 3.x onwards, they have provided it in the form of micrometer and Brave libraries. Using these, it is achieved in Spring Boot 3.x. And before that, for 2.x version, they were using sleuth for distributed logging. Okay, now what does it mean working with micrometer? Okay, it's nothing but you need to come somewhere like this. You just need to add these dependencies in your project. Okay, actuator is only for monitoring, but yes, micrometer tracing and micrometer bridge Brave dependency. So this Brave configuration and micrometer configuration, using this, you can start with your tracing. So what you are supposed to do, in your log file, you need to add this kind of statement also. So all the logs which are generated is going to have this. Okay, can we test this thing out? Okay, let's try to spend some time in testing this thing out. What we will do is, we will go into our processing service. We will go into our processing service. Here, let's say console log, we will say after time, we will put trace ID and span ID. Okay, trace ID and span ID we are putting. I have not added anything else. Let's just save it. Just observe. Initially, when the server is restarting, it does not have any value. This is trace ID, this is span ID. It does not have any value. Whenever you make an incoming request, okay, right now we have not added micrometer dependency, so it's not having any of the changes. Let's add the micrometer dependency. Okay, we already have actuator added, so we will add these two dependencies. Okay, these two dependencies. Go into pom.xml, processing service, and add this kind of dependency. We are putting micrometer and Brave dependency. This is something which developers are supposed to know. That is where we are discussing it. Okay, whenever we change here in POM, better to start it fresh. Here we go, right click, run as, Maven build, clean package. So for all incoming requests, this trace ID and span ID should be created. Okay, so when you are just starting it, it does not come. Okay, the jar is being built. Next we go, right click, run as, Spring Boot app. Okay. Okay, let's try to make an API call. Just observe, two values are populated. What is this? This is trace ID and span ID. So after this, we have populated trace ID and span ID. This is trace ID, other one is span ID. Notice, we know the log patterns. Every statement which will be printed will be having this trace ID and span ID. So using this, we can do the tracking. So observe all the log statements. From the time our request started processing, it used the same ID for everything. And it is not just span ID is at that service level. Trace ID is even in a distributed manner. Across service also it is going to remain the same. Okay, so let's take an example of this. So as we started doing the testing, we added micrometer and Brave dependencies and trace ID and span ID. This becomes your trace ID. Every log statement is having this. And this became a span ID. Okay. Now just imagine a use case where processing service calls Stripe provider service. Right? Communication. That is what distributed logging. Same request across multiple instance services are running and we want to do the logging and some unique identity required. Okay, using trace ID we can achieve that. How you exactly do that? So in Stripe provider also we need to enable this kind of logging capability, then only it is possible. So how do you make it possible? Okay, logging capability we want to add in Stripe provider and along with this span ID, trace ID. Okay, so firstly, let's start bringing Stripe provider up. Again, same problem will be happening. Eureka it is going to look for. So I'm making some changes so that we don't use Eureka client. Okay. Okay. We remove this. We don't want to use this. So it is gone. Next, we have added trace ID and span ID related libraries. So we will add this. Okay, fine. Save it. Let's try to do a build. Right click. Run as. In package. In interview time for microservice, this discussion is also important. How do you uniquely track all the logs? Yes, using micrometer and Brave concept, trace ID and span ID. Trace ID is common for the request across multiple microservice and span ID is service level. Before 3.x, so till 2.x, sleuth library was available for that. Now onwards, they have merged it along with micrometer and Brave library. Okay, this much of information you should definitely have. Okay, next, what we will do, whatever logging configuration we have here, we will copy that and we will be putting it in this place also. Same log file we are putting here. Okay, just observe here also trace ID and span ID came. Okay, what was there? Same thing came here also. So services just restarted. Now let's do one testing of initiated API. So initiated, we know how the flow happens, right? Initiated API flow. It first goes to processing service, then it calls this one. Okay, so now we are testing that flow. Here initiated API. It calls Stripe provider also. Let's see how exactly that happens. Okay, so here we are and go to processing service. So let's say this is the request number 1, which we got. Okay, request 1, which we tested. On processing service, this happened. Processing service. Now we are testing our second scenario. Processing is going to call this. We are making request 2. Okay, let's go here. Go to initiated. And now we will be calling. Loggers are ready. Let's call it. Okay, it went end-to-end responses here. That is fine. but we are not interested in just response. We are interested in the values of this one. As soon as your request started, okay, it gave this trace ID and span ID. Just observe, all throughout the request, same values, trace ID and span ID. All throughout the request, same values. So in processing service, we can in fact refer it back here. Processing service, it gave this as the trace ID and span ID. And span ID. Okay. Now, further we called Stripe provider. Let's see what logs come in the Stripe provider system. So we go here and we reach out to Stripe provider, observe. Observe, these are the logs of the Stripe provider. What's happening? Trace ID is remaining the same even in Stripe provider. What is happening? Across microservices, this ID is remaining common. Now, using this ID, you can search the logs with regards to this request, how the end-to-end logs are going. So this is really very much required for microservice-based system. Trace ID and span ID, you learn the concept of distributed tracking, and you learned how you can enable these kind of configuration. Notice that span ID is service level, so it keeps changing. So just check it out. So first, okay, the service Stripe provider restarted. After that, as soon as we got the request, it started logging these values. Okay, what is the trace ID? What is the span ID? It generated a new span ID here. So it is all handover between two systems, right? So it takes this, it passes this value, makes the HTTP call here. Okay, processing initiated, update to initiated, converted to HTTP request, and preparing HTTP request, prepared the request, and now it's calling, making HTTP call. These two are the statements. Now just observe. So before that, same values, after that, same value. So while the request is processing, it is using the same trace ID and span ID. In between, when you call Stripe provider, they received the same trace ID, it generated a new span ID, it continued further, and it made a call to the Stripe system to get the response. And if you observe, after you get the response also, we still have the same, trace ID is the same, span ID is whatever it was. So this concept is distributed logging. You need to be aware. Okay. So guys, are we clear with this? During interview now, you have to, when they say microservice, all the concepts of microservice, you know, technically these three concepts you have to further dig down. A circuit breaker concept. Next, Eureka server and Eureka client, how basically this communication happens. Next, how distributed logging happens. Showcase these three things. Along with that, you already know RDS, service level, decentralized database management, how the services should be, right? Every service should be independent service. All the principles of microservice, put it into this manner, right? And there are some more configurations of microservice like config server, the way right now our application connected to secret manager. Like that, you can create a separate server, call it as config server. Centralized property files can be there. So now every other thing, now you can explore one by one. But a lot of things, I think the context of microservice should be clear in your mind. Some practical things and otherwise also, right? And this is where if you go to spring.io and just say microservices, okay? So these guys have provided the diagram. I think we are able to understand this thoroughly. Okay, we are able to understand this thoroughly. Every application will be scaling. Next, for matrix, actuator is used for matrix. Database, SQL database, NoSQL database will be there. Message broker, we discussed the use case about ActiveMQ, that kind of message broker. So your applications can connect with these things. Next, config server. It is nothing but the way secret manager is one of the service where central data is available. Like that, you can create a new Spring Boot application and have your properties configured here. And in Spring Boot application, you just read it. So central one place you can set up, you can explore on that. Service registry, we already understood yesterday topic. Circuit breaker, we understood it earlier on Wednesday topic. Next, Spring Cloud Sleuth. Till 2.x, they were using the Sleuth. From current time for distributed logging, Micrometer and Brave Spring 3. Maybe they did not update the diagram once the new version are received. Apart from that, there is API gateway concept. During interview, you can say, we are using API gateway of AWS. So the plan will be, we will use it from AWS itself. We will just buy a service, set it up from there. If you don't want to use AWS, they have provided an option. The way we created Eureka server, right? Eureka server, like that you can create your own API gateway also. A new Spring Boot application, put the jars for making it an API gateway. That kind of project can be done. So, but I think at a high level, you understand there are multiple pieces and they all work together in a microservice-based system. So during interview, how are you planning to use API gateway? We will set it up in AWS. Right now, for the 2 months, we have built these microservices. Before going live, this API gateway will be set up in AWS environment. Sleuth we are not using, we are using Micrometer. Circuit breaker implementation is in place. And currently, we are not planning to go with service registry. We are using direct API call. However, as our project grows, more number of services get created, we will be using service registry. We have done the POC and you talk about yesterday's session for that POC. Database, what you are using, SQL database, RDS, message broker, ActiveMQ we are planning to use. The use case you are already clear. For metrics, AWS is providing metrics, plus at the same time, actuator we applied for looking at some of the stats also. Just these answers with regards to microservice is far depth knowledge. And majorly it boils down to break down the project into independent services so that they can run by itself. Right? And all the other principles you can relate. Fine. Thank you everybody for your time. It was great being with you for 2 months time. Really appreciated. 100+ hours. I think it will be a lot of things to cover. But like we discussed earlier, repeat the entire topics once more. Do practical once more. That is mandatory. Don't leave the topic. Ek aur bar repetition is required, and recording access is already available. If you have opted for 1 year access, you can watch it more time. Okay? But chodo nahi guys. This kind of discussions, for you to gain the knowledge, it will take you 2 to 3 years of good projects to get all this thing. We put it into Power Pack, 2 months of duration. So all the project related terms we have put in place. So you create a difference using this knowledge during interview. Know that 80% of entry-level job seekers don't know what you know right now. That is guaranteed. Okay? You discuss with your friends and bouncer. You talk to 3 years of experienced people, they will be able to understand whatever you are saying. Your knowledge has already gone to that level. You check it out by having conversation with other people. But practice is required. Confusion should not come. So practice, do practically. Okay? All the very best. Happy to have you guys around. We will keep doing more AI related sessions. So every few weeks, we are planning to have one weekend topic on AI related. So I will keep informing that. So if you are available, join. So we have to upgrade to AI engineering. So I am taking that initiative. I will upgrade myself, explore a lot of things in that. And while I am doing it, I will even share it with you so that you can also take the benefit of that. Okay? So because yes, it's required. Chalo, thank you everybody for your time. So people just say upgrade. I'm like, chalo, first let me also upgrade, because AI engineering is required for me also and my future as well. So both things we will do together. Okay. Chalo, thank you everybody. Take care. See you guys later. If possible, join for morning 8:30. Monday to Friday, morning job seeker stand-up we started 8:30 in the morning. If you're available, definitely join. It will make you productive, focused, result-oriented person. Okay. Monday morning 8:30, we will definitely daily connect. Chalo, thank you all. Have a great day, guys. Have a great day. And thank you for joining for 2 months. Great to have you guys along. Okay. Bye, team. Take care. I will share all the notes and everything in the group. Bye, guys. Thank you all. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Bye, team. Take care.